Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
I'm Sophia Carter. To give you some context, it'll take you back to my high school days. I was always highly competitive and consistently ranked among the top students. Sports were another story. While I participated in individual sports like tennis and did well enough, I didn't always come out as the winner. My competitive nature led me to explore ways to gain an edge through cheating and playing head games with my opponents. Although many were more athletically gifted, I often found myself victorious under these conditions. You could say this was my introduction to manipulating my peers, a skill I had already honed in childhood with my parents and two brothers. Growing up in an upper-middle-class household taught me early on how to divide and conquer to get what I wanted from them. After high school, seeking to avoid the stress of pursuing a university degree, I enrolled in Westford College to study parallel courses. I lived on campus and shared a room with Emma, who quickly became my best friend. Emma was pursuing a degree in marketing and was equally intelligent. Together, we effortlessly attracted male attention on campus thanks to our looks and figures. Weekends were rarely spent alone, as we enjoyed the company of various male companions. By the time we reached our final year, both of us had experienced semi-permanent relationships. During this time, I embraced much of the feminist ideology. Scholastically, I had surpassed all my male peers, and I believed in the mantra that if you wanted something done right, rely on a woman. This belief extended into my personal life, where I sought full control in any heterosexual relationship. However, I understood the need to strike a balance and not appear too domineering while attracting a partner. I acknowledge having 5 sexual relationships throughout my high school and college years. I didn't see this as promiscuity. Instead, I was exploring potential lifelong partners, as I had no bisexual inclinations. By the time I met Ryan, my current boyfriend had reached his expiration, and I was ready to move on, especially after meeting him at a campus party. Ryan was with a girl who was an acquaintance of mine from school. It appeared that they were not getting along too well. Somehow, Ryan and I began talking while, surprisingly, our dates seemed to hit it off with each other and wandered off to another room, leaving us alone. Both Ryan and I later found out that our respective partners had also been contemplating breaking up with each of us. My ex was fed up with my manipulative ways since I had always called all the shots in my relationships. Ryan's partner was unhappy with his total morality and honesty. She wanted more of a swinging and partying lifestyle. She was also into recreational drugs, which Ryan objected to. Ryan and I were quite attracted to each other. There were sparks flying between us on that first evening. Ryan was extremely bright and very interesting to talk to. He asked me for a date for the following week, and I immediately accepted. We later did the decent thing, left the party with our dates. I gave my date the Dear John news in the car as he drove me home. He was not upset with my words, and we promised, and did, remain close friends. Ryan and I became inseparable as a couple. I must admit that I pursued him until I caught him. He appeared to appreciate all the attention I lavished on him. I had always been a flashy versus trashy dresser, and I outdid myself whenever I was meeting him. Even after we married, I carried on with this type of attire, my ego being reassured by how I was able to attract the attention of other men. I suppressed, to a major extent, my competitive feminist ways during our courtship. I loved the fact that Ryan was a man completely at peace with himself. He was very mature and lived by a strict moral code in keeping with that maturity. While not overly handsome, he was very attractive and a good dresser. His clothes were cut to show off an extremely well-toned physique. He kept fit by working out 2 to 3 times a week, and his weight never varied by more than a couple of pounds in all the time that I was with him. I had never met a man whose word was his bond and knew that he would always tell me the truth. When we both realized that we were on the road to matrimony, we had sex together, only it wasn't just sex. He was an extremely accomplished lover and teased me and pleased me and satisfied me better than any of my former lovers. If the East German judge had been awarding marks, he would have received a 7 on the scale of 0 to 6. I fell completely in love with him. We wed just over a year after our meeting at the party. At the time of our wedding, I was 25 while Ryan was 30. I had started working for a firm of 40 lawyers, while Ryan was employed by a medium-sized cybersecurity company that he had joined after receiving his university degree in computer engineering. We were both extremely well paid. We bought a house in Mapleton, settled into the typical dink, double income, no kids, lifestyle, although we had both agreed that we did want children at a future date. Ryan was the most easygoing individual that I had ever met. In the first years, we were able to travel to many places in Europe and even took a trip to Japan. We were theater-goers and attended many other cultural events in our city. Of course, I did the research and made the reservations for all our outings since Ryan was so easy to please. Quite often, I attended sporting events with him since he was a rabid fan, and by being supportive of his interests, I gained a great deal of pleasure in just sharing these outings with my husband. Ryan handled our joint finances. Our paychecks were deposited directly into each of our personal savings accounts by our companies. Afterward, we would transfer money from our individual accounts, less each of our living allowances, into a joint account. Over those first years, as we each received pay increases, we would transfer these additional monies into this joint account. Ryan would use this account for investments or to pay for large purchases for us. Through my performance in the office, I received a promotion and a 20% raise. I told Ryan that the increase was only 10% and left the other 10% to accumulate in my personal account as mad money. I really don't know why I did this, but thinking back, I now recognize that I was prepared to use money to help me manipulate our marriage. As I said, Ryan was totally easygoing and agreed to most of my requests. I thought that I was the person in control of our marriage. But Ryan would fight tooth and nail if he felt that I was going too far in my demands. There were several cases in point. The first one was the purchase of our house. I wanted to live in a new development in Mapleton, while Ryan wanted to live in a more established, upscale neighborhood. He reasoned with me about his choice, telling me that the grounds were already landscaped and the house did not need any additional work to make it into our home. He also considered that, as a long-term investment, the older house would appreciate at a greater rate because of its location. There would be less sweat equity involved, and we would have more time to pursue our other interests together. His logic finally convinced me, not without some histrionics on my part, and we purchased and moved into his choice of houses. I must say that he was right, and I never regretted giving in to him in this regard. This was probably the only major purchase we made where I let myself be swayed. I wanted a turquoise sectional, which I thought would set off the decor of the living room. Ryan objected, saying that bright turquoise had no business being inside a house. He hated the color. Wouldn't the same sectional in some other shade do? When I needed a new car, I wanted a Cadillac Escalade. Ryan, while not a tree hugger, was environmentally aware and was against buying such a large gas guzzler that we, as a couple, did not need. I refused him sexually over these and other petty disagreements until I eventually got my way. I may have won those various battles, but it was the start of my losing the war. Ryan seldom sat in the living room after we bought the turquoise sectional. When, of necessity, he was in there, he would sit in a position so as not to directly see it. To the best of my knowledge, he never sat on it. With my Escalade, he would not drive it or ride as a passenger. Whenever we went out as a couple, we would use his hybrid Lexus sedan. Of course, the expense of driving the more maintenance-prone and fuel-thirsty SUV came out of my personal allowance. After 6 months of driving it, I was ready to throw in the towel because of the expense, but I was not prepared to give him the satisfaction of admitting he was right. It was the same with other things that I coerced him into buying over his reasoned arguments. His silent disapproval of the way I kept manipulating him was apparent at every turn. One particular major argument came over my wanting some expensive designer lingerie. He argued that he could not afford it out of his personal allowance and that it would be necessary to tap into our joint account, which he was not inclined to do. I suggested that he pay for it by padding his expense account, since he traveled frequently for work. He went ballistic and started shouting so loudly that I thought the neighbors would hear. That would be stealing. You want me to do something that is completely against my principles? I will not violate those beliefs to keep you happy. I'll tell you how you can afford it. Divorce me, and with the settlement you'll have adequate funds to do whatever you want, and I won't have to listen to your continuous goading and pushing to get more of the non-essentials that you seem to want in life. I was completely shocked at how quickly things had escalated over such a simple request and my response as to how he could afford it. Of course, I could have bought the lingerie using some of my own mad money, but I was unwilling to do so. After all, wouldn't I be buying such things for his vicarious pleasure? I had to defuse the situation quickly. I stripped off my blouse and my bra and told him that I didn't need lingerie. I was going to burn my bra and not wear anything under my clothes. He tried to grab for my bra, but I held it out of his reach. He chased me around the house and finally caught me in the bedroom. By that time, we were both laughing so hard that all anger was gone, and we made up. When I thought about this argument, it had never occurred to me, nor had I considered, that he had limits that could not be exceeded. I was now aware that I had made an error in judgment in pushing Ryan as hard as I had in something which conflicted with his principles. I realized during this argument that asking Ryan to go against his ethical morality was a fight that I could never win. It would be better for my future demands if I backed down as quickly and completely as I could before I hit that point. I was totally surprised by Ryan's anger, since the situation had escalated so quickly. He had leapt from being cajoled to threatening to divorce me. His response to my suggestion seemed to be completely out of proportion. Possibly, he did not intend to threaten to leave me, but there was no way of ever knowing without me pushing him past his limits. I was not prepared to test his resolve in that regard. His reaction did not seem logical, since he was normally very reasoned in his responses to my demands. The only thing that came out of this spat was that I better understood the ground rules for future confrontations. I had learned that I could not go against his personal integrity in attempting to win the war. Such clashes were infrequent and paled in importance to the good times that we had together. And I was still deeply in love with him. We had been married for almost 6 years, when Ryan told me that the company where he worked was in major financial trouble. He knew that he was in danger of losing his job due to staff cutbacks. He had contacted a headhunter and had been offered a job in his field, which, although offering higher pay, would entail a great deal of travel. It was really a job for a single person, but no applicant had Ryan's expertise or experience for such a relatively responsible position. We discussed it and decided that, although it was barely possible to live on my salary alone, it would be better that he accept the position. We felt that we could withstand the high degree of separation for a couple of years while we kept building up our nest egg. In the meantime, he would keep his resume current. Of course, this all occurred during a major downturn in the tech industry, and no other jobs materialized. After a couple of months in this job, I could tell that Ryan was lonely when he was away from me on the road. I would enclose small gifts and notes in his suitcase to try to cheer him up and let him know that I was thinking of him and missed him. We talked on the phone almost nightly, but it was no substitute for face-to-face contact. While he was home most weekends and occasionally had meetings at the home office about once every 6 weeks, we tried to keep our romance alive. Both of us recognized that we had agreed as a couple to the long-distance relationship caused by his job, but I could tell that the time apart was wearing him down. Once, when he was in Denver for an extended stay, I arranged for one of my former classmates and her husband to join him for dinner. He was very happy with their company for the evening and showed his appreciation for my thoughtfulness when he returned home in a most delightful manner, which also pleased me to the utmost. For my part, I had a circle of friends that I could call on if I felt lonely. I spent quite a bit of time with my best friend, Emma, who was still single. Emma spent some of her time traveling for her company and told me of the loneliness of her life on the road. She further added that sometimes it was too much for her, and she would allow some man to pick her up and, if necessary, have sex with him just for the human contact that she craved. I knew that she wasn't promiscuous but dealt with her own loneliness in that particular manner. While she and I were the same age, she still hadn't found anybody who she considered acceptable for a more permanent relationship. Because she was not quite sober one evening, she told me she envied me, since although Ryan traveled a lot, he always came home to me for sex, and he had always assured me that he was faithful to me. Emma believed him, as did I. She also confessed that since I had told her how good a lover Ryan was, she would love the chance to put her shoes under his bed for at least one night. I filed that fact away in my memory for future reference. One weekend, after steamy sex, I revealed my secret sexual fantasy to Ryan. I would like to have a sexual encounter with another man while Ryan watched. It could even become a three-way if he were so inclined. I could feel his whole body stiffen as he rejected the idea, and he said, "When we married, we both pledged before witnesses and before God to forsake all others. We agreed to commit ourselves to each other for the rest of our lives. Are you asking my permission to fulfill your fantasy? If so, you can do that with your next husband." I knew then that I had already gone too far and had to back down quickly before things escalated out of my control. I made light of it, telling him that some of the women at work had entertained that thought and some had even gotten into this lifestyle. I told him that I only wanted to know what his reaction might be. He was slightly miffed by my change in tactics but appeared slightly suspicious as to why I had ever brought the subject up. When I asked him about his own particular fantasy, he indicated that it would be to have two women, including me, in the same bed one night. But he commented that it would never happen, and he would never put himself in a position of doing something of that nature because it was against his beliefs. I never told him that I could have satisfied his fantasy if he had shown any interest, but because of his strong position, I kept my mouth shut. While discussing our fantasies, I told him that if he ever did cheat on me, I might leave him or at the very least get my own revenge for his infidelity. He assured me that I would never have any concerns in that regard. A group of people from the firm met for drinks after work about once a week. If Ryan had been home during the week, I wouldn't have gone out with them, but I had time to kill, and the group rehashed some of the cases that were current. I looked at these meetings as furthering my own legal education. My firm had recently hired a new lawyer, Adam, a handsome, single man who turned women's heads whenever he walked through the office. He flirted with me and made me feel attractive and was always there at the bar with the group. In retrospect, my flashy way of dressing and responsiveness to his flirting must have indicated to him that I was fair game. He catered to me and gave me a great deal of attention while trying to win my favors, even though I turned him down every time he suggested that we get together in private. He made me feel special, and it was very exciting to be pursued. It made me recall some of the fun that I had when I was still into the dating scene. I had never even had a one-night stand, since all my sexual experiences had been with long-term dating partners. Finally got to me. I began to want to see if I was missing something. It was a major thrill to realize that I was desired by another man. I didn't want to cheat on Ryan or have the problems of covering up an affair, since I feared that Ryan would divorce me if he ever found out. I started to concoct a plan to get Ryan to cheat first, and then I could get my revenge in return. Foolishly, I really wanted to have sex with Adam. To that end, through my firm, I knew of a quasi-legal escort agency that had been set up in Ridgeview, one of the cities that Ryan often visited. It was an agency that checked to find out whether spouses would remain faithful while they were on the road. I contacted the firm and selected a woman, who, knowing Ryan's preferences in women from experience, would have the best chance of seducing him. Since Ryan called me prior to going for dinner while he was away, I was able to get Hannah, the escort, to meet him on one of his infrequent visits to a lounge in that city. I had provided her with a picture of Ryan via email so that there would be no mistakes. Hannah's report was that Ryan couldn't be seduced, as she had literally thrown herself at him. Since she didn't know that it was my husband, but only that his wife was a client of their firm, she had added that, although rare, it was heartwarming to find a man that was so faithful. I paid her invoice by wire transfer so that no record was available to my firm, but a fair bit of my mad money disappeared. Ryan even remarked to me when he returned from that trip that some woman had made a play for him, but he had turned her down. I knew that I would have to try something else if I was going to succeed with my plan. I don't know why, but I was becoming obsessed, both by the fact that Ryan was unwittingly winning this battle and that, in my convoluted thinking, I would be unable to have sex with Adam. I'm sorry to say that neither the morality of my plans nor the possible effects on Ryan or our marriage ever entered my mind. I had a husband that I still deeply loved, and who was faithful, loyal, and true, but I was set on a path to make my husband commit an infidelity just so that I could cuck him. Any normal wife would have been overjoyed to be married to such a man, but the excitement and the thought of winning another battle caused the whole situation to overrule my better judgment. True, I had not won all my battles with Ryan, but I knew that I was still ahead in the game, the war between his reasonable approach to our life together, while I kept going for the jugular. After all, I knew that I was the dominant person in our relationship, and I was not going to let him thwart me. I enlisted Emma's help with my next plan. She knew of my wish to experience another man and told me quite reasonably that the grass was not always greener on the other side of the fence. She cautioned me that one-night stands were not all fun and games and that I should be thankful for the marriage that I had. I told her that I wanted her to seduce Ryan, and we would never get caught in my plan. She was quite reluctant at first, fearing that she would lose my friendship. I finally overcame her objections, since she really liked Ryan and did want to experience his lovemaking. I had a copy of Ryan's itinerary and knew when he would be in Bayfield, a city that Emma often traveled to. He would finish his meetings late on a Friday afternoon, and there were no flights home until Saturday morning, so he had to remain overnight. Emma would arrange to stay in the same hotel that night and accidentally meet him there. I knew that Ryan was quite careful while traveling. He had researched all the day assault narcotics, since he was afraid some stranger would sedate him and leave him in an alley somewhere after robbing him. I had also done some research and obtained some GHB, which I gave to Emma to conquer his inhibitions and allow her to take him sexually. I didn't think that he would be on his guard with Emma, since he knew her so well as my friend, and he enjoyed her company. The stage was now set. When he returned that Saturday, he did not appear well. I unpacked his bags as usual and found Emma's panties, which was our signal that she had succeeded. I now had my hunting license. I confronted him, and he confusedly admitted to being with Emma the previous night. I acted angry and consigned him to the guest room, giving him the cold shoulder for the rest of the weekend. Emma and I met for lunch on Monday, and I listened to her report. Everything had gone completely according to my plan. He had been so incapacitated by the narcotics that he had thought it was me in bed with him. She had been enthralled with his love-making techniques, although he was not overly active due to the muscle relaxation caused by the narcotic. She asked me to reconsider what I planned to do, since on the morning before going to the airport, he had been very concerned about what had happened to make him compromise his values and the effect of his seduction on his basic beliefs. This was more of a concern for him than any consideration for possible retribution that I might have in store for him. She really regretted what she had done to him and his feelings. In the light of day and not being under the influence of narcotics, she could not get him to perform with her again. She told me that I had a very moral and faithful husband, and we had caused him a great deal of mental anguish by making him cheat involuntarily. She told me to consider what would happen to my marriage if Ryan ever found out what had been done to him. In retrospect, I realized that I had made a major mistake in not heeding her words, but at this time, stupidly, I felt that I had too much time and money invested to not go through with my plan. I had never really considered the fact that Ryan already knew me too well through my antics in trying to get my way throughout our years together. While he was confused by the current situation, he must have smelled a rat when he reviewed my past behavior in light of what had recently happened to him. When I went to talk to him on Tuesday, I added additional fuel to his suspicions, although it was not apparent to me at the time. I told him that I was going to take another man as my revenge, and I wanted him to be present to watch. He remonstrated with me and argued that two wrongs did not make a right. The way I was cold-bloodedly planning an infidelity with someone else escalated the whole situation, since he felt that he had only accidentally strayed. My actions could mean the breakup of our marriage, which, although I wanted time with Adam, I definitely did not want to lose Ryan. His attitude and his loud voice basically indicated that I had hit his ouch factor once again, and there was no way that I would be able to commit adultery in his presence and force him to watch. I realized that it would be a mistake to push the envelope, since he already knew of my fantasy, and he recognized that I had wanted to fulfill it through my so-called revenge. Though I had been acting angrily throughout, I must have shown some of my disappointment and triggered additional suspicions in him over the whole scenario. I backed down at this point since I thought that half a loaf was better than none, and I agreed to let him off the hook on the watching brief. I took Adam into my and my husband's bed a week after Emma had seduced Ryan. I had told Ryan not to come home that day and evening until I had exacted my revenge, since he had been so adamant about not watching. I was ecstatic over the fact that I had been able to put one over on Ryan and had won another battle, which I perceived would never be discovered. My belief that Ryan wouldn't be able to put two and two together was a major misunderstanding on my part. I had left him too many clues. I was less than completely aware, nor did I ever consider how devastated he himself felt over his own infidelity. I had hurt him badly through my plan, and he must have decided to act to confirm his suspicions. I had no feelings for Adam. I had only wanted to totally experience the thrill of outside sex on my own terms, and in my own house and bed. I had quickly realized that Adam was a less than adequate lover. Nonetheless, I thought that my hunting license might still be good if I could keep Ryan grieving and off balance while leaving him in the dark about everything. I had taunted Ryan that he had created the situation, and I was just getting even. I had cut him off from any sex with me during that week, but had told him that he could get lucky as soon as I had my own revenge over his indiscretion. The Saturday after the night that I had bedded Adam, I had called Emma after Adam left and arranged to go shopping with her. It was an unguarded conversation, and I told her how much I appreciated her efforts on my behalf. I was in such a good mood over my victory that I asked her if she thought she could get Ryan again, since I had enjoyed myself. Although there was nobody else on my horizon, I thought I might want the chance to explore future opportunities. Adam's lovemaking had been less than adequate, but I was still elated over the fact that I had been able to totally fool Ryan through my plan with Emmis and my connivance. Ryan still thought that he had strayed first. When I came home from shopping, he wanted to talk to me. I was slightly belligerent and threw back in his face that he had been the first to cheat, while I had just gotten even with him on the previous night. He made the reasonable point that he had been quite open about his supposed indiscretion with Emma, and he wanted to explore what had happened between me and my paramour. I had really looked forward to my evening of lovemaking with him, since I had been unhappy and unsatisfied with the pathetic efforts of Adam's performance. I was pleased that, as I then perceived, Ryan had no idea what I had done. I was still exultant for being able to cheat on him on the previous night without his recognition of the overall situation. The first question that Ryan asked was whether Adam and I had used protection the previous evening. I tried to evade the question, since I had never demanded that Adam do so. When I finally admitted that we had not, Ryan told me that neither of us would get lucky for the next 6 months, since either one of us could be infected with HIV through my own and his unwitting defilement. His comment was devastating because of my sexual need for him that evening. While I was willing to bet that Emma was not infected, there was no possibility that I could ensure that Adam was clean. I was still certain that Ryan didn't know anything until he asked me, "How did you find someone so quickly to get your revenge? How long had you had someone waiting in the on-deck circle to obtain your revenge? Why had you tried to push your husband to help fulfill your major sexual fantasy through your supposed act of revenge?" I had to backtrack and temporize. I realized that I was in deep trouble and had made another major mistake by taking Adam into my bed without a suitable time lapse. It would have been far better to have taken him while Ryan was out of town on business. I still wanted to rub Ryan's nose in it, and I intended to do so for some time. Now I know that I had made another major mistake. I still felt that the scam I had perpetrated would never be discovered. Ryan continued on, his voice now cold and unwavering. "How did you get Emma to participate in this whole fiasco? Think about this. Your actions have been confirmed through other sources, which have helped to resolve many of my suspicions. I know what additional information I need to verify the details of this entire escapade. If you lie, it is definitely the end of us and our marriage. I want the truth. You know that I will be asking Emma about her involvement." I started to panic. "You seem awfully friendly with the woman I supposedly cheated with. Most wives would be scratching out the eyes of the other woman. But you called her and went shopping with her today as if nothing ever happened between her and myself. Oh no, another major mistake." He had never spoken to me in such a cold, unemotional voice, and I recognized that I had never seen this side of Ryan before. I now realized that, under my husband's easygoing exterior, there was cold-tempered steel. He was not going to be put off by any of my platitudes or arguments. He wanted answers to his questions. He kept talking to me in that cold voice, no histrionics, and I finally realized that I was in very deep trouble. If I tried to lie, he had already put together enough clues to catch me in it. I knew that Emma would protect me if she was on her own when talking to him, but there was no way of knowing how she might react to an emotional scene like this. Somehow, Ryan convinced Emma to come to our house while we were in the middle of this confrontation, so that he could get the answers he wanted directly from her. When she arrived, I knew I was trapped. I tried to signal to her that Ryan was not fully aware of everything, but he was relentless with his questions. I tried to intervene, but he shut me down. One by one, my plans unraveled. He quickly determined from Emma that I had been contemplating cheating for over 5 months and had been plotting different plans to make it happen. He was angry, but still controlled, keeping his emotions in check as my plan was gradually exposed, including how I had tried to have Hannah seduce him. He brought up how I had found Emma's panties in his suitcase. "Was that your signal to her?" he asked. Emma hesitated, but then nodded. She had. He had drawn the right conclusion. His voice was now ice cold. "What else happened that Friday night? Did you drug me?" Ryan looked directly at Emma. I know that I had no rational thoughts that night. I kept thinking that it was Sophia in bed with me, or I would never have been able to perform. From what I do recall, you were a lot more passionate in bed than Sophia usually is. Emma looked like she was about to break down. He turned to me. "What did you mean when you asked Emma on the phone this morning if she could get me again?" Then he hit me with the bombshell. He had tapped the phones. He had everything he needed. Emma started crying. She admitted that she had given Ryan a half dose of GHB, the drug I had provided. Now he knew everything. Ryan's voice rose to a shout. "You had me ingest a narcotic made from floor stripper and drain cleaner. You're both lucky you're not in jail and facing trial for involuntary manslaughter." My stomach dropped. That was the first time I had truly realized how dangerous my game had been. That drug was not to be used with any other medication. Ryan had been taking Percocet and antibiotics for a toothache, and he had a drink with dinner. I felt sick. I had never even considered that his life could have been at risk. I had thought it was just another battle, one that would allow me to take another man on my own terms. Ryan's voice went back to cold steel. "Do you understand what you did? You caused me to be assaulted, and then you tried to convince me that it was all my fault. You treated me in a totally shameful way throughout this past week by blaming me for something that was out of my control. You even had the audacity to keep blaming me today when we started talking. I'm finally satisfied that I have been able to determine the totality of your scheming to betray me. I don't know which is worse, that you schemed to sleep with Adam or that you set me up and tried to destroy my values." Ryan kept going, his voice cold and unwavering. "You sedated me and forced me to become an involuntary adulterer. You broke my wedding vows for me. That hurts worse than the fact that you set up my assault and your own infidelity. I know you thought you would never be caught, but I would have to be a complete idiot to not pick up on the evidence you left behind. You get terrible ideas, and then you push and push until you reach the edge. This time you pushed too far. Cheating on me in the manner you did was exceptionally nasty and mean-spirited, and I don't think I will ever get past that. You betrayed me by planning my whole seduction and then intentionally cheating with Adam, without a single thought of how I would feel. Then, after all of that, you kept deceiving me by accusing me of being the cheater. You even decided, through your lust and stupidity, to pass me off to another woman. A woman I never would have wanted. Just so you could have your fun with another man." Ryan took a deep breath, then spoke the final words that broke me. "I cannot trust you anymore. That trust is gone. I do not consider us to have any basis to either continue with or rebuild this marriage. I'm leaving you. My lawyer will be in touch." He turned and walked toward the bedroom. I followed him, pleading. I kept apologizing, but he wouldn't listen. When he finished packing, he turned to me. "For what you've done, to humiliate me, to betray me, to rob me of my dignity, I will be exacting my own revenge. I haven't decided how yet, but I may name Adam in the divorce." And then, just like that, he was gone. After Ryan left, I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Emma stayed, trying to comfort me, though her own guilt was evident. She didn't say, "I told you so," but her concern was clear. She offered suggestions on how I might win Ryan back, but I barely heard her. The only thing echoing in my mind was his last words, that he would be exacting his own revenge. I didn't know what that meant, but the fear and uncertainty left me shaken. Yet, in the back of my mind, a small glimmer of hope remained. Maybe, after he had time to reconsider, he would come back. Maybe, once he remembered all the good times, he would realize he still loved me. Maybe there was still a way to fix this. On Monday, I saw Adam at the office. He grinned at me in that predatory way, unaware of the storm that was brewing. I told him, flatly, that Ryan had left me because of our actions and that he might be named as a correspondent in the divorce. His face blanched. At our firm, sexual relationships between employees were strongly discouraged due to harassment policies. If Ryan went through with it, both Adam and I could lose our jobs. On Wednesday, Adam came to me livid. Ryan had called him. He had hinted that there was a possibility I had transmitted an STD to him, and that Adam might also be at risk. Adam went off on me, cursing and vilifying me. He was furious, terrified that his reputation and job were now on the line. What he didn't know was that I had already been tested on Monday and had received a clean bill of health. I let him stew in his fear. He deserved it. Later, I heard through the office grapevine that Adam had been roughed up in a parking lot. The timing was too perfect. It happened on a day I knew Ryan was in town. Nothing came of it, but Adam became noticeably more subdued at work. I also noticed that he no longer spent time chasing after other married women. By the end of the week, when I came home from work, I saw that Ryan's office was completely empty. All of his remaining belongings were gone. That was the moment I knew Ryan had no intention of coming back. True to his personal ethos, Ryan offered a no-fault divorce. He was willing to split our assets 50-50ths. I refused. Not because I wanted more money. I still loved him and wanted a chance to save our marriage. My lawyer advised me that if I contested the divorce, Ryan had evidence. He had provided videotapes of my affair with Adam. My lawyer had been given a copy and advised me that if I pushed back, Ryan would change the grounds to adultery, which could cost me my job. I realized I was cornered. I also couldn't retaliate by mentioning Ryan's involvement with Emma, because I might be implicating myself in a crime. He could prove in court that I had arranged and instigated his assault. If I wasn't careful, I could face criminal charges. Ryan was so distressed by everything I had done that he was willing to destroy me legally just to be rid of me. I finally agreed to settle on the no-fault basis. Ryan provided financial statements, listing the value of everything we owned: our house, furniture, investments, and savings accounts. Surprisingly, he even included his personal allowance account. I had a moment of conscience and told my lawyer to add my secret Mad Money account to the total. Even though I had lied about my salary increase, Ryan was still fair in the division. I kept the house, furniture, my SUV, and a portion of our nest egg account. I was shocked at how much wealth we had accumulated together. Most of it had come from Ryan's smart investments. After everything was finalized, I felt completely empty. I tried calling Ryan multiple times during the divorce process. He never answered. I wrote him letters. They were returned, unopened. Months later, I finally reached him by phone. The conversation was brief. I told him that I was sorry. His response was simple: "I forgive you." My heart soared for a moment. Does that mean we can try again? His voice turned icy. I forgive, but I will never forget. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Ryan knew me better than I knew myself. He understood that if he took me back, I would keep testing him. I had undermined his values too many times. I had broken him, and now there was no coming back. For the first time in my life, I was forced to face my actions. I went to therapy. It didn't take long for the therapist to pinpoint my problems. I had been a feminist who denigrated men. I had tried to dominate my marriage instead of treating Ryan as an equal partner. I had been jealous of Ryan's strong values and had tried to undermine them. I was insecure, using my appearance to seek validation from men. I had treated my marriage as a war, picking petty battles just to prove I could win. I had resented Ryan's strength, but instead of learning from him, I tried to break him. I realized how badly I had hurt him, and it was too late to fix it. I changed not for him, but for myself. I threw out the turquoise sectional. I sold the Escalade and bought a Toyota RAV4, still all-wheel drive, but more practical. The house was filled with memories, but I learned to focus on the good ones. I still kept in touch with Emma, though not as much. Ryan and Emma remained friends, But I knew he didn't blame her. Just me. Through work, I heard that Ryan had started his own security firm. I secretly sent him business through my law firm. Even after everything, I still wanted him to succeed. I learned that Ryan had started dating a widow, someone who lost her husband in a car accident. I also knew he still saw Emma often. I had one final thought. Wouldn't it be poetic justice if Ryan and Emma ended up together? She had been the one woman who had truly experienced his love. And I was the one who had thrown it away. 8 months after the divorce, I was promoted at work. One of the senior partners sat me down and told me, 6 months ago, we wouldn't have given you this position. You've changed. Your divorce was a turning point, and it made you better. That was the moment I realized Ryan had gotten his ultimate revenge. He had left me, and I had lost everything. And that was the real punishment. After my promotion, I was finally in a position of authority at my firm. The senior partner's words stayed with me. I had changed. I was no longer the hostile, combative woman I had once been. The divorce had forced me to reevaluate everything about myself. I was now 32 years old. I wanted a child. Having children had been in the future plans for Ryan and me, but now that future was gone. I knew that I wasn't willing to be a single mother. I went on occasional dates, but the men I met were either mama's boys, divorce rejects, predators, or smooth talkers like Adam. I was still celibate and found myself becoming more selective. I was searching for a gold nugget in a pile of dross, but I had already thrown away the real gold I once had. I don't know where Ryan is today. Maybe he married that widow. Maybe he and Emma finally realized they were meant for each other. All I know is he was right about everything. He knew me better than I knew myself. I pushed him too far, and I lost the best man I will ever have. I don't expect sympathy. I did this to myself. But if there's one lesson to take from my story, it's this. Never test the limits of someone who truly loves you, because once they're gone, they're never coming back. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share,